as requested by Melopoeia, a love story, like Cinderella. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, there lived a young man who had had a very tough life. When he was 5, his mother passed away from a terrible sickness. And when he was 15, his father left him for a woman who would not accept a new son. This man, Carl, had now grown into a rather sad 20-year-old man. He didn't live on the streets, for he got by. He worked at whatever small shops in the kingdom that he could. He made just enough money to rent a very small, but his own home. And he cooked and he cleaned all around the kingdom for anyone who would give him but a penny. Many of these people were not nice at all. They would kick him when he was scrubbing their floors, or take out their whips and whip him if you were to make but the tiniest peep. One day, Carl had heard that there was going to be a ball. The king of the land had a daughter. 18 years of age now, she was to be married. And, of course, all suitable suitors were to show up by the king's order. But he had much work to do. He wanted to go to the ball, but so much work, and if he did not work, even for a second, he may not make his rent. And so he toiled at his duties, and the days passed, and the day of the ball came closer and closer. One day, the boy was working at the tailor's, sweeping up and cleaning up any of the extra material that had fallen to the ground, and the tailors rushed to make shoes and coats, and the tailor stopped him. "Carl, you're a young man. You must be going to the ball tonight, no?" "No, sir. I cannot afford to go to the ball. I cannot afford to take time off of my work, and there are very particular customers that have asked for me specifically while the ball is going on. I cannot let my customers wait." The tailor shook his head. "No, my boy. You must go to the ball. It is by the king's decree, after all, and it will be a great time for us all. Festivities abound, and all on the dime of the king." Carl sighed. "But sir, even if I wanted to go, I have nothing to wear. How could I go to a ball in these rags of mine?" The tailor chuckled to himself. "My boy, you have come to my shop and you have helped me clean for 3 months. Every day you have come in, and every day you have done your duty without complaint, even when I have made a complete mess of the place. My boy, I want you to go to this ball, and I will give you the suit necessary." Carl was stunned. Never before had anyone in the kingdom, anyone who had taken advantage of his services, even thought to give him something extra. It was a rare opportunity, and Carl knew that maybe he wouldn't be able to make his rent, and maybe he would destroy some of the relationships he had made in his work life, but never before had this kindness been shown, and never before has he been able to get to any party. So, reluctantly, he accepted the tailor's offer, and donned a fine suit made of blue velvet, a ruffled white collar, and pants that oozed nobility. The tailor had some extra dress shoes that he could borrow, and so he did. And he looked handsome beyond measure. He was quite proud of himself. He never knew that he could look so dignified. He never thought he could feel so dignified for what he was. And so, with the tailor, he went to the ball. When they arrived at the ball, they went into the grand ballroom, and they saw the king sitting upon his throne. But the princess was nowhere to be seen. After some time, the king stood up, and he yelled out to the crowd, "All suitors that have come here tonight, I have requested the presence of all suitable men, and I have also requested, without your knowledge, the company of all of the women of the land, as I am sure you have now noticed. I have kept my daughter a secret. I know, you all know she existed, but I have made sure that none of you have seen her. And it was for this day. One of these beautiful women in the crowd tonight is my daughter. I will not tell you who it is, but I encourage you all to go mingle with everyone you meet, and maybe meet that special someone tonight." Carl found this to be a very interesting way of doing things, but the king had often been quite clever in the way he ran the kingdom. He was certain that the princess would easily be spotted. She would be wearing the nicest gown. She would be holding herself with the greatest dignity. And she would not take a moment to look at a young man as simple as Carl, even in his great clothes that he had gotten from the tailor. About 10 minutes into the ball, he ran into a nice girl. She was wearing a nice dress, and she carried herself with dignity but humility. The girl came up to Carl and asked for a dance. "Might you be willing to share this dance with me, young man?" she asked. Carl looked at her. She looked to be younger than him, so it was kind of strange to be called a young man, but he wasn't about to deny her her dance. He didn't have a partner anyways, so he took her hand, lightly placed a hand upon her waist, and they waltzed the night away. They went out to the balcony of the castle, and they talked a bit. They talked about their interests. Both loved starry nights, like the night that the ball was being held. Both really liked the color blue, and both dreamed of being something great. Time went on, and Carl realized that he must go. The girl he had danced with and talked with all night had gone off to meet a few of the other boys, as was custom in the kingdom. So Carl, being tired, decided to head off home and call it a night. Some days passed, and before long, Carl started to hear rumors going through the land. Apparently, at the ball, the princess had very quickly decided upon a suitor. The princess and her guards were traveling through all of the houses of nobility, searching for that suitor. When they found no suitors in the nobility, they went on to the knighthood. All of the knights were looked over. The princess making the travels herself, hoping to find the man of her dreams. But days passed, and no news of this suitor came forth. After some time, rumors started to spread through the poorer parts of the kingdom. The parts where Carl, of course, lived. Apparently, the princess was making a journey through the slums. The place was no place for a princess. It was dirty and dangerous, but with many knights at her side, she made the journey. She was determined, apparently, to find this man. Time went on, and stories of being visited by the princess came from all over the slums. One morning, Carl heard a knock at his door. "This is the king's guard. It is your duty to let us in." Carl stood up with a start. He didn't know what the king's guard could possibly want with him. And then he remembered. The princess was making her rounds, and apparently it took her so long to find her suitor that she actually had made it to his little hovel. So Carl walked over to the door, swung it open, and was surprised to see the girl at the ball standing before him. She was looking shocked as soon as she saw him. It was an overwhelming sight for Carl as well. In a beautiful white dress and a stunning tiara was the girl that he had danced with. After some time of staring at each other in silence, the guards chuckled and smiled at Carl. "Congratulations, son." The girl leapt into Carl's arms. "I'm so glad I found you. I was giving up hope. I thought maybe you had left the kingdom for some reason. Or maybe you were a dream. But here you are, my prince." Carl was stunned. "But you, what? Me? What?" The princess just nodded. Carl looked down at the princess, her beautiful smile, her beautiful dress, and he couldn't believe that him, a little more than a beggar, could possibly convince a princess to fall for him. It wasn't a month later that the royal wedding had commenced. Carl stood by his princess, and the princess stood by her prince. They said their vows, they smiled at each other, and they ended what was a wonderful story in a deep, everlasting kiss. And and they all lived happily ever after. The end.